When Judd introduced me here for the first session, I knew I was on a tight time frame, so I didn't respond to the comment that he made about the size of the church house that you were building. And so I can't pass up an opportunity, okay? So what I want to say is this, that I'm learning something. What I'm learning is that a church is not measured, or say the measure of a church is not its seating capacity, it's its sending capacity. So maybe the seating number is not that great, a concern. It's its sending capacity. So one of the things, so let's think about two different, so we as a people, and when I say we here, I'm talking about our churches. I think it's fair to say that we see a significant movement of people through our churches. I think maybe earlier once at a men's meeting with the Bethel Church, I showed you a little graphic I had made about the feeder system that feeds people through our churches. And so here's what the point is that I am of the persuasion, and I think we're finding this. It's not just personally with me. We as churches and church leaders are finding that people leave our churches for lack of challenge, for lack of purpose, for lack of vision, for lack of call, and so they pass through. So the idea is we become, and part of it is because we have measured progress by staying. How many people stay? So let's turn that thing over and say, how many people are we sending? If you have lots of people coming into your church, glory, hallelujah. This is an opportunity to be a sending church. Something else we've learned is that there are two groups. There are the sendees and the senders. And we tend to overemphasize the importance of the sendees, those who are sent. And we underemphasize and do not pay enough attention to the senders. There is a purpose in filling the pew at your local church Sunday after Sunday and being a sender. Okay, so, but then another thing we're learning is that there's a difference between the sent and the went. Okay, so. Okay, I didn't mean it to be a joke, actually, because it's pretty serious. And here's what I mean: that there is so we have over the years become a rural people, and there's I'm trying to issue a call for urban church planting. Why are we not going like the Apostle Paul did and the early churches did? They went to the large urban centers where the people were living, and there's where they planted churches. And somehow we have made it almost like strategic to not go there. And so, can we think about the purpose of sending people to plant urban churches, to live in town, live in the city? That's where the angst is. So, all this to say that we as a people have for far too often, for lack of vision, we have people in our churches who went because they were not sent. And what we're seeing is that the urban church plants that went often implode. Actually, their success rate is they often struggle, and success rate is often not high. And it's for lack of a sending church that understands that these have been sent from us and that we support them, not just financially, but we support them morally, we support them spiritually, we support them with prayer. They're an extension of us. And so there's So there's a big difference between the sent and the went. And we should pay equal opportunity to the senders and the sendees. Pay equal attention. Okay, so something else I wanted to mention is that we talk here about Anabaptism or being Anabaptist. That's almost like only within the last generation that it's become common to say that I'm Anabaptist. We have, for centuries, we've identified as Amish and Mennonite. And so those are like two more like distinct like designations. But I think it's just more recently that we talk about we are Anabaptist. And so I think that's actually a better designation for a number of reasons. One of them is that we're not talking about like naming ourselves after a man's name. We're talking about like a movement. And so I'm kind of curious. I'm assuming everyone generally knows where the term Anabaptist comes from. So Anabaptist it doesn't mean this is like overused, an overused joke. I know that. It doesn't mean anti-Baptist. It's Anna means again or re. So this was actually a derogatory term that was given by the reformers when their stepchildren, the Anabaptists, started leaving their churches to form their own and to baptize those who already had been baptized when they were babies, rebaptizing them upon their confession of faith. They called them rebaptizers, Anabaptists. In fact, when in that first January 21, 1525 meeting in the home of Felix Manz's mother, Felix Manz was the first martyr in the Zurich area when he was drowned in the Limmat River that flows through Zurich. And they said with derision, here's your third baptism. And so, that's where the name comes from. But so today, as you talk about, well, what are we? We are Anabaptists, and and essentially that whole term revolves around that we believe we believe that we should be baptized upon our confession of faith. Then I want to say as well that we had talked about the age of angst. This is a dynamic. It's a culture. There's a cultural shift happening. Are you all aware of this cultural shift that is happening, where the rights of those who with deviant, unbiblical behavior are being codified into law? It used to be that they were there, but they didn't have actual like legal rights. They are now being codified into law. I'm sensing that like our generation and many of those about my age and a little bit younger, let's say the baby boomers, we had the blessing, quote, blessing of experiencing a golden age of Anabaptism where there wasn't even a draft, and there was economic prosperity, and the people of this world come by the millions to view us and idealize the way we live. But we often, and so we could say this is what we believe, but it was never tested. And I am looking out here at the younger ones in the audience today. And I am thinking that you will have opportunity to learn whether you truly believe what you say you believe in a way that the previous generation during the Golden Age was never tested. And we could very easily go from being idealized by the millions who come to visit us to becoming persona non gratis because we will not we cannot conscientiously join in with the values of our culture. And all this to say that there's a reason why the Anabaptist Disciples of Christ were formed as a group of churches to deal with these changing dynamics. Someone posed the question in a publication recently: will Anabaptism survive the 21st century? And I would say it depends on how we grapple with the questions and how we answer to ourselves the questions we talked about in this first session. Okay, so now getting into session number 2. This is essentially an explanation of who the Anabaptist Disciples of Christ are. Now, I'm trying to think when Bethel would have joined ADC. Does someone know offhand? But it was early on. Soon after ADC got started. So I kind of look out across your numbers here, and I wonder how meaningful it is in the pews that your leaders go off to an ADC annual assembly, and they come home and say, we're part of ADC. How meaningful is that actually to you when you hear them say that? I'm assuming it means something, but I am glad to have the opportunity to share about what we were trying to accomplish when we sat together as church leaders to form this affiliation that we call Anabaptist Disciples of Christ. So the background is that ADC was formed in 2016, and this is the way we put it: as duly ordained Anabaptist ministers of the gospel, we hereby establish this affiliation of conservative Anabaptist churches seeking like-minded fellowship, instruction and accountability in church administration and congregational life in the biblical pattern of the apostolic church, to passionately follow Jesus Christ in every generation. So that's basically our I am statement there. So why was ADC formed? Well, one of them we've already talked is congregational accountability. So let me hit pause here and go down a little bunny trail here, but here's, and I'll lead into it by saying or explaining how that when we as a group chose the Mennonite Confession of Faith of 1963 to be our confession of faith, we made some adaptions or some amendments. And one of the amendments we made was in the statement about the church, there was the wording that churches gather themselves together into conferences. Now, this was written by Mennonites, so that's the way Mennonite churches do. And we kind of looked at that and said, that's actually not the way that we do. So here are some terms that we should start becoming familiar with. We believe in congregationalism. We are congregationalists. That means that when we think about church life, church governance, everything rests with the local congregation. And so we are like Amish churches are. We are congregationalists with an asterisk, and it's like elder-led congregationalism. That means we have elders, like the Bible teaches. The Bible is very clear that there's a group of men that are called for a very specific purpose in the church. They're called elders, they're called pastors, they're called bishops, and they're called elders, pastors, bishops, presbyters, overseers. But they're those who give guidance, but they are not the rulers. So it's not like there's a hierarchy where they are at the top and they rule, but it's actually they are like the first among equals, because we're all equal within the church. But the elders are given the responsibility of leading the church, but to do it as servants of the church. So there's this. So we believe in congregational autonomy is the term, as compared to churches forming into conferences. And so one of the things we wrestled with, well then, but how will congregations be accountable if you're not in a conference? And so just like individuals need accountability, congregations need accountability. So ADC is a voluntary participatory network, but when you become part of the network, then we find accountability among each other. And so, like, for example, just to be candid, if Bethel Church, if your leaders would all of a sudden go way off into left field on something, there are other ADC church leaders who would come and say, Brother Judd, can we have coffee? We need to talk about something. And that's the way this would work. And by the same way, Brother Judd has that burden and responsibility and duty if that happens somewhere else in another congregation. So it's for congregational accountability, to provide intercongregational assistance, pastoral fellowship. We have an annual assembly where we meet together for fellowship, to provide pastoral training for bivocational pastors. Like, there's a great strength in bivocational pastoring, having multiple pastors. But make no mistake, there's also a cost to that. And that is that you overload, often burn out almost, your pastors and church leaders, and so the work needs to be shared, and there needs to be training given that's intentional, because by the way in which we work, the next time you have an ordination here, one of you will go like overnight from sitting there mainly as a listener to now being the one that's the expositor. And so attention needs to be paid to equipping bivocational pastors. To provide biblical resources for pastors and churches. Okay, so here's a key idea. The Great Commission is greater than any single congregation. So that means we must work together. So ADC is an effort to work together. Intercongregational collaboration in evangelization and missions, with equal emphasis on the two great calls of the church: to make disciples by evangelizing unbelievers, to make disciples by nurturing believers. Those are like the two great calls that the church has. And to develop sending churches. We believe a primary reason that so many members pass through our churches is the lack of a clear demanding call for evangelism through church planting, as we were discussing earlier. So what is our faith proposition? We believe that the Sermon on the Mount has the answer for this world's needs, this world's angst. Conservative Anabaptists who understand the gospel of the kingdom are uniquely positioned to advance the kingdom today. More could be said on that. I just think that, like, the age of Anabaptism is here. The age of irrelevance is here for a peaceful revolution. When there's strife and turbulence all around. As our culture becomes more secular and ungodly, the faithful Anabaptist lifestyle of love and peace and biblical living will become more radical and compelling. The time is right for a generation of kingdom-minded Anabaptist churches to flourish and impact our world for Christ. So, this next graphic is one that I put together, so bear with me here if you say, wait a minute, that's kind of simplistic. But I want to communicate here a bigger idea to you. So think about your church leaders who are, and this is like many churches, and it's not just the church leaders, but I am thinking of them right now, where we look at the times in which we live. We are now living in a digital age. I am part of what's called the hinge generation. We remember before the internet. There are many of you that don't. And so we're living in this digital age, the age of information, like information overload. There's bombard. You hardly know what to think anymore because everything comes at you. And we're now at the point of saying, instead of saying, well, hey, this is a blessing that I'm getting all this information, we're saying you have to sort through that, narrow it down, focus on only some that's meaningful. So this to say that our church leaders are standing here and are saying the regulation-based administration of the past. We can argue whether it served us well or it didn't. That's not the point anymore. That regulation-based administration is no longer effective in our digital age. And then our church leaders, wrong way. And then we say, well, okay then, and we look the other way. And what we see is what I'll call the slippery slope. Now, if you Google slippery slope, that's a term that actually means something. It means that there's no stopping point. It means that when you start, there's no convenient place to stop again. And so, what happens then is we become acculturated, and it's no longer compelling. We don't stand for anything apart from what our culture already we join the angst. And so the ADC faith proposition is an effort on the part of our churches to look this way and say, the church governance of the past is not going to cut it any longer. And we look this way and say, but we don't want to start down the slippery slope. So, and in a unique twist, we kind of know better what we are not than what we are. We know that we're not like these legalistic people, and we're not like these modern acculturated people. Well, what are we? Well, we're not like them and not like them. So we've taken upon ourselves the burden of articulating what are we? What do we believe? What is our purpose in this world? What kind of churches should we be in our culture? And that's the faith-based or the discipleship-based faith proposition. So we essentially say the path forward is a path of discipleship where more rules are not going to cut it. But undisciplined living is not going to cut it either. So the path forward is where churches function together through discipleship, to hold one another accountable, to disciple one another, to be close enough so that even if you have a church with, I'm not sure what your seating's going to be in your new building, but I think you have mechanisms by which you have smaller groups that disciple each other. That's the whole point. So what is distinct about ADC? Decisions made locally. It's basically, we believe in local church autonomy. By the way, I know that this is generally not like if your pastors, if one of your pastors would get up and say, today I'm going to have a message about church governance, yeah, you would probably say, okay, let me sit back and wait this out. We have a phrase, everything rises and falls on leadership. I'm proposing to you that when it comes to churches flourishing, everything rises and falls on church governance. Pay attention to the way in which you govern your church life. Everything rises and falls on church governance. Okay, now I want to get to, so there's a current reality. So as I want to present our mission and vision and core values. So the current reality is kind of what we are right now. And then we have a vision for the future. The mission is how do we get there. The core values are the parameters along the side that say what are the principles by which we operate. So here's the purpose statement for ADC, Anabaptist Disciples of Christ. It's to equip an affiliation. By the way, affiliation is the term that means we're a group affiliated together, but not through membership. You don't become a member of your church doesn't become a member of ADC. It becomes a voluntary participating congregation in this network. So it's an affiliation of sustainable kingdom churches. So two key adjectives: sustainable, from generation to generation. When the Lord returns, will He find faith on the earth? When the Lord returns, will He find faith in the U.S.? When He returns, will He find faith in Ohio? Will He find faith in Holmes County? Will He find faith in Bethel Fellowship? So what does it take to sustain ourselves from generation to generation? And kingdom is the term we chose because of the two kingdom doctrine that we believe, that we've talked about earlier. Our vision is to be an affiliation of sustainable kingdom churches living out the teachings of Jesus Christ as faithful disciples. So our mission is to equip an affiliation of sustainable kingdom churches through active discipleship. There's that term, active discipleship, compelling theology. Are we relevant or are we not? Leadership training, educational resources, mutual accountability, and fellowship. So our core values are Christocentric. We have, by the way, you should have received a trifold. Everything I'm telling you is on that trifold. So our core values are being Christ. Christ is at the center of everything. Brotherhood. We treat each other as brothers and sisters. Yeah, this is like what the New Testament says about the church. Like when you're baptized, it's because you believe, but it's a B and B when you get baptized. There are two things that happen. You believe and you belong. Well, to what do you belong? You belong to the family of God. Your brothers, your sisters. That's why we use that terminology. Jesus is our older brother. It's a brotherhood. And we act within the church, this brotherhood, just the way we do within our family, where we deal with the hard things that need to be dealt with as we learn to live with one another within a family. We do the same thing within the church. We value Jesus' example of discipleship as a model for preparing pastors. So if you think about what Jesus did with His disciples, like He taught them, then He sent them out, and then they came back again. He critiqued what they did. Like they didn't, remember when He sent out the 70, like they didn't get. They said, even the devils are subject to us. And Jesus kind of said, I saw Satan fall from heaven. So, it's like that's not that big a deal, guys. Just be glad that your names are in the book of life. And so he corrected them and guided them. And so that's discipling. And then responsibility. We chose responsibility instead of accountability because it's voluntary accountability. But to be accountable, you actually have to be you have to choose to be responsible. And transformative faith. So there they are, the core values of ADC. So we show them this way, and the reason I put this in here is because if you've heard Bill Mullet preach and seen his PowerPoints, you've seen this graphic, and I wanted to show that we borrowed his graphic here and used it. Now, so ADC actually is organized this way. We have participating churches, then there's the leadership committee. The leadership committee is currently Lonnie Beachy and Mark Miller. Lonnie Beachy is a retired lead pastor from Haven Fellowship in Plain City. And Mark Miller from Cross Point, and Dave Nisley from Faith Christian Church in Manassas, Virginia. He's associated with Choice Books. You may know him as Choice Books, Dave Nisley. And I'm an advisory member. Then there is the mission board. Your own Judge Schrock, I'm assuming you're aware that your own Judge Schrock is a member of the Impact. Impact International is ADC's mission board, and Judd is a member of that board. Impact International has a director. It's Tim Byler, who you may or may not have met. But Tim Byler is from Haven in Plain City. He actually works for Impact International and is organizing all the activities of Impact International. So one of the goals is to have a domestic, somewhere in the U.S. base, of like a mission training base, and also an international base in Europe. So we were thinking it's going to be in Greece. Right now there's a proposal that base could be in Albania. And if you're wondering, Albania, like most people, where's that? Albania is on the west coast of the peninsula, where Greece is on the east coast. We put on annually, ADC has a youth conference. Last year, actually, Judd was one of the speakers last year, Be Real. And Tim Byler spoke on identity in Christ. So here's a slide that I just want to show to give us an idea about, well, who do we associate with on a larger level. So we have a circle of ministry relationships. So that's to represent ADC churches and our mission board. So there's Legacy Christian School. There's EBI, the Elnora Bible School, Faith Builders, IGO, MTC in New York City, Zolliken Institute. See, that circle kind of is meant to show that there is a larger circle of ministry relationships. So when you think about ADC as an organization, these are other entities that we're kind of like, that are parachurch organizations that we are associated with. And it's important to us because if we go outside of this circle of ministry partners, then we soon rely on others who are not in alignment with our values. So these others are all kind of in alignment with our values, stand for what we stand for, and so they are. Remember that the Great Commission is greater than any single congregation. So I'm putting this up here just so to say that you as a church should be aware that it's important how we relate with these other entities, these other ministries, and we should also avail ourselves of the resources that they offer to us. ADC has a website. It's called AnabaptistDisciplesOfChrist.org. On that website, we have the Disciple. The Disciple is our quarterly newsletter. I think it was passed out here this morning. I'm showing two of these today here. One of them is the Anabaptist Vision for Today. The one you have here has an article. The lead article is by Val Yoder, and it's like an Anabaptist Vision for Today. I just want to highly recommend that you read this article. It's a challenge, a call for Anabaptists today to rise up and be the people God has called us to be in our culture. The other one has a lead article on following Jesus into the Bible, how Anabaptists understand Scripture. Another one that I would really recommend that you read. That was I think the April edition. And then on that website, there are also videos of all the assembly messages, and so these were just messages from the last one. So that brings us to the end here. I should have given you ushers a warning about this. Bring this to a close, but ask, are there any questions or comments? Since Judd is on the board of the mission board, a board member of the mission board, Brother Mark was one of the founding members. Is there anything you would wish to say? Or are there any questions? Put your hand up if you have any questions. Can't believe I explained it that well. If not, then, dear brothers and sisters, we are Anabaptists. It's the 21st century. We continue Anabaptism as an expression of apostolic era biblical faith. So I trust you will find it meaningful, not because you're an Anabaptist ahead of being a Christian or a disciple of Christ, but if you are asked, how do you live out your faith in the 21st century? As you read the Bible, as you read the New Testament, and you come across those radical calls of Jesus, or how do you live that out? You can say that I'm part of a church that identifies as Anabaptist, but it's because we read the New Testament and read it literally, and we do what we believe that Jesus meant what he said, and we just live it out, and we do it together as a brotherhood. And we disciple each other to stay on the straight and narrow. That's essentially what it is to be a 21st century Anabaptist. Back to you, Joe.